And we'll start with Denise. Good afternoon, Denise. Good afternoon. Great to see you. The interesting part I found of this panel was that we identified 3 inspiring women who, for whatever reason, it's not very common to find women in your positions. Why do you think, Denise, we're still lacking presence of women in high-ranking positions such as yours?
Well, I think it depends on what you want to do. I really think that everything isn't for everybody, but I think if that you do want to ascend to the highest rungs of the ladder in your organization or in America, in a corporation, you have to put in the hard work is the first thing. So I don't think it's a lack of hard work. IBM did a study a few years ago of our executive women, and they didn't find a lack of women who were consistently high performers. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the visibility. They weren't visible to the upper ranks of the corporation. So part of it is, if you want to climb the corporation or your organization, take risks, take on positions that might not be comfortable, but that you can distinguish and make a name for yourself, and I think you'll rise to the top.
Mindy, you've been with the Miami Herald more or less 30 years. You did become the first Hispanic editor in 2010, but only the second woman to hold that post. What worked for you? How did you become and reach that position?
You know, I wish I could tell you that I had this type A plan and everything worked great, but what worked the best was actually going off script. I found that I made 2 decisions in my career that were really based more on personal than professional. In other words, there are things that I really needed to do at that time of my life because my children were very young, and so I took 2 paths. One led me to editing, which I swore I would never do, because we used to call that going to the dark side in the newsroom when you went into management. And so, but my kids were little, it was better hours, and so that was great. And then the second thing I did was that I left a traditional newsroom, like the Miami Herald, and I went to become the bureau chief of People magazine, which I also was told, well, that's great, I hope you don't ever plan on coming back to real journalism. So and so it was a calculated risk, but again, it was really about finding work balance, and actually ended up being great. Both of those things ended up being great for my career in the end, even though it wouldn't have been a clearer path at that point.
Miriam, when we did the pre-interview, you mentioned that women need to start thinking a lot more like men. What did you mean by that?
We tend to have more fear. We tend not to create the partnerships. When we first talked, remember, Pamela, that I said to you, women have the queen bee syndrome. And you said, what is a queen bee syndrome? And I said, well, definitely is not Beyonce. It's basically, in a beehive, you have one queen bee, and then everybody else is a worker. We don't tend to pull ourselves up and to bring other women up and to create the partnerships that today are necessary that men do. Men do have their smoking clubs, their whatever clubs. We don't have a sisterhood. And even though it's changing daily and it's improving tremendously, we need to build on that. We need to build on each other's success and pull each other up and create that sisterhood.
In that sense, IBM Corporation has done a great job, and that study that you mentioned also talks about coaches and mentors. And then we spoke a little bit about that and the difference between a coach and a mentor. Can you expand a little bit on that?
So there's a lot of work done about mentors and sponsors and coaches and others. What the study talks about is that one thing they'd like women to do is to plan their career, be purposeful about what you do. And in the sense of planning your career, once you have a purpose, you should have an advisory council. And on your career advisory council, you should have coaches, mentors, co-workers who know your abilities, managers who you've worked for before, so that as they begin to see opportunities, they can put your name forward for certain opportunities to be more visible and take more risks. The difference between a mentor and a coach is a mentor is someone who can give you honest advice on how to move forward in the company or something you're doing. It's more about your career. A coach is someone who is coaching you on a specific skill or an issue or a concern that you have. For instance, if you've been called in to present to a high-level executive and you've never done that before, a coach is someone that you could practice with who can give you some unvarnished advice about that, versus a mentor who's looking at your overall professionalism and your career advancement.
You also, Mindy, when we spoke about work and life balance, you told me that you consider it the biggest lie, the big lie.
Yeah, sorry.
Is it impossible to have that balance?
Yeah, you know, I really think it is a big lie, and I think women of our age have, you know, that's what we were told, like you can have it all, and you can if you sleep about 3 hours a night, and so, and then be kind of mediocre at everything. I think the reality is that, I'm not saying that you can't have, you know, a family and have professional fulfillment, but I think the reality is that there are points where you're going to be devoting more to one, and then you're going to shift and you're going to give more to the other. And it's a constant balance, and it's constantly shifting, and you need a really incredible support system to make it work, because, you know, all of our jobs, I think, you know, they require, you know, you have to put in a lot of time above and beyond if you want to really get up in an organization. So I think, you know, I got lucky that I have the, you know, an abuela, right? Abuela to take care of the kids, and a really supportive husband who was willing to kind of shift his own career priorities to accommodate what mine would require. So it's just really tricky.
But Mindy, if I may add to that, I think it's not, we women kind of worry about time. And it's the quality of time that we're giving. We're so concerned about time. We're so concerned. One of the things that we were talking about earlier was guilt. Men don't do guilt. Women constantly, we thrive on guilt. I did not do this. I did not go to this game. I have 2 grown children, luckily. And I asked them about, a couple of years ago, how many times where I was not there for you? And they said, Mom, you were great. You were there most of the time. That's what matters. So it's not being there constantly, it's the being there when it's important. So that it's learning to juggle that I think it's important.
Denise?
And if I could add, it's about work-life integration. I agree with you. It's not, there's no balance. Balance says 50-50, right?
Yeah.
I certainly don't have a 50-50 marriage. I still take care of most of the household and the kids and everything. So it's about how you integrate your life. And I also agree that in order to move forward, you have to have excellence. You really do. You got to put in the work. And I believe that I have the capacity to be excellent at one thing at a time. And I'll be honest, there have been times when my career, most of the time, my career has been foremost. And that's where I spend most of my time. I do a great job with the family and kids, but my excellence was with the family, was the work. Other times, I needed to be a mom, or I needed to be a daughter, or I needed to be a wife. And then I wasn't so excellent at the job. In fact, to the point where at one point, I took a step down in my career so that I could work a 9 to 5 and take care of some other things that were more important. So you can have it all. I just don't think you can have it all at the same time.
Let's talk a little bit about change and transitions. And we'll start with you, Miriam. You were 25 years at Transatlantic Bank, and then you transitioned into a smaller boutique bank. How did you adapt to that, and how do you deal with it on a daily basis in terms of new technology, conversions, and how you lead your team to adapt to change and transitions?
It was something I wanted to do. So let's take that out of the equation. Most changes create anxiety and fear. For me, it's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to start something new. Not without its issues. I remember talking to one of my very good friends, John Kislak, and saying, John, I'm going to change and make a career change. And the bank that I'm going to work with, I'm going to build is $38 million in assets. He says, what? Some of your customers make that in 1 year. And I said, but that's fine, I'll be fine. And it is something I wanted to do. And building something at the age of 60, this was going to be my last hurrah, was something that was important to me. However, it was not without a lot of, challenges. Example, building small community bank. We're now $400 million. Okay, technology, bricks and mortars. Technology, bricks and mortars. We decided to go in a, banking is one field that did not move into technology quickly because we have that touchy-touch. We have to touch our clients. We have to hold our clients. We want to hold them. And we decided to go technologically. Are we the best, most innovative technological bank out there? No. But we chose no bricks and mortars. We chose technology. But there was a lot of things that we had to do. One example, we hired a lot of millennials. Why? Because these people embrace technology. they were the ones training my older people, like myself, this is how we do it. And they were enthusiastic about it, and then everybody became enthusiastic. So it's a combination of, you have to, I feel young at heart, so maybe that's why I embrace change. And this was something that I really wanted to do, something that I thought, okay, it's going to be my last legacy, and hopefully it will be.
Every year, Mindy, people say they killed the newspaper. It's not going to last, it's dying, especially for you. Going digital and all the digital platforms, how have you been able to adapt and meet your team to adapt to all the digital and technological changes in the newsroom?
I would say reports of our demise have been premature. Thank you so much. The reality is that we have more readers now than we ever did, and the majority of those folks are coming to us online. And the this is a two-pronged answer. So technologically, I will say that the digital space has given us the ability to tell stories in a way that we just never were able to do before. I mean, before we basically, you could, take a photograph, you had words, and, if you're broadcast, you had images. But the ability now to do this incredible interactive databases and the video storytelling and just all sorts of tools at our disposal is just incredibly exciting. And the power of the journalism remains the same. I mean, there's study after study that shows that even on that tiny device that you hold, that people are really will spend time with a very long narrative story, as long as it's something that is worth spending time with, a deep narrative story. And yesterday, this is appropriate. Yesterday, the Pulitzer Prizes were announced. Just look at all the amazing work, all the things that nobody would know about if that work hadn't been done by journalists. And we were finalists, so we didn't win, but still we're in the game. We were finalists in local reporting. And that's not the award, it's about the quality of the work that we're doing on multiple platforms now. We just can't, we just really think of ourselves now as a digital media company as opposed to a newspaper. We happen to print a newspaper at the end of the day.
Denise, going back to the mentors and the coaches, you mentioned that you were the high performance and the hard work was put into it, but you think two men who made you visible.
Yeah, I've been in the IT field since the late 70s, and back then it was before most of you guys were born, but I did learn to program on machine code language and with punch cards. But at that time, in corporate America, there weren't a lot of women, right, before me that I could ask advice to and other things like that. So I sort of went into my career without planning my career, which is what I do recommend that you do. And I did the hard work, but I believe that looking back now, when they talk about sponsors are people who speak up for you behind closed doors, right? Perception of your brand is everything. And perception is not what you want it to be. Perception is the way you carry yourself, the work you put in, and things like that. So if I look back on my career, I now know that there were 3 males who pulled me up in the company when I was in my 20s, and I remember the 3 specific instances when it happened. Once I thought they were going to tell my big boss that they made a mistake when they hired me. And the other 2 times, I really was afraid I was being fired for something that was going on. And while that's funny, let me tell you now, as an older woman, I can see what they saw, because I was focused on the fact that I was in trouble, that I had done something wrong, or that they were going to get rid of me. What they saw was how I acted under pressure. That's what people want to see to pull you up in the company. When you're at your worst, that's the real you. And so they were looking at the executive presence, they were looking at the ability to calmly assess the situation, they were looking at the ability for me to own my mistakes, but not own what I didn't make a mistake on, to figure out how to get out of it and make recommendations for improvement. So there were all those things, and most of all, a leader is somebody that's willing to be on an island by themselves. And at those points in time, there was nobody to back me up. But did I shift in order to be pleasing, or did I stick to my grounds when I felt that it was important? And so those are all the things that made the difference, that had them suggesting me for jobs further up in the company, but I didn't know it was happening. I was just happy to interview and take the job, so.
Mindy, when you took that job with people, you mentioned a lot of people question your decision, and to a certain point they mocked, like, oh, go do entertainment and don't come back to news. But looking back at it, is it one of those risks that you took that was worth it? What did you learn from it? And what do you advise people in terms of taking risks and going against what perhaps most people are telling you to do?
I think it was a little counterintuitive because, like I said, one of them is, and I'm sorry, I also didn't plan my career, so I'm negating her message, but don't do what I do, just, it's like do what we say, but not what we did. And so number one, it was really driven by a personal decision. I think too often we're really a little timid about making a decision that is good for your personal life and then happens to end up being really great for your professional life as well. For me, I have a very well-respected editor who's now the editor of a major paper that I won't name, and he said, that this is all wonderful, but he was the one who warned me that I wouldn't be able to get back into, traditional journalism anymore. But for me, it was a decision about how could I fit my still very young children? How can I fit a career around them and still do the work that I loved? And I will tell you that chasing some of these celebrities is almost as hard as some investigative stories we did. I just want to say I had newfound respect for the work that they do. But also it was great to be exposed to a different corporate culture. I was hired at the Miami Herald as an intern out of college 15 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. And so that's really all I ever knew. And I think being exposed to a different culture, that ironically was not as open as the Miami Herald. You would think it's People Magazine, it's great, it's fun, and it was actually like a caste system. But you learn, within each of those systems, you learn kind of how to operate, and I had to develop other skill sets within the context of that organization that I thought was actually extremely valuable when I was ready to leave.
Marian, what are the pros and the cons of mentoring younger, whether women or men, in a smaller corporation setting, in a smaller firm?
The pros is that you see immediately or almost immediately whether they are capable of doing the job because you're so close to them. You're constantly with them, they're constantly with you, and you see whether, okay, is this person going to be the right person or not? The concept sometimes you don't have the manpower to provide the amount of mentoring that they really need. I mean, right now our staff is 40, so we're pretty thin. So that's the big con that you have in a small community bank. It's, to provide the time that people really need. But I think that we are working through that, and I think I'm spending a lot of time now coaching. Mm-hmm. I've actually stepped out of administration and into the coaching role, which is one that I enjoy, both men and women, and I dedicate a lot of time teaching from experience and telling them, but create your own methods, create your own thoughts, create your own patterns. But this is how it's been done. Look at the things that could be done differently. So in that respect, it's something that I'm doing now that I really enjoy.
Denise, when IBM invested in this research, in this paper that I got a chance to read, do you advise other companies, why do you think it's worth investing in developing women in leadership position, and what was the feedback within the company when the paper was released?
First, I want to say that this is a publicly available paper, so if anybody's interested in reading the white paper, just come up to me afterwards, give me your card, and I'll send you the link to it. We did it internally because it's about profit, guys. It's about having the best and the brightest to run your company. And if you believe that talent is equally distributed among male, female, all races, all cultures, then if you only have one particular segment running your company, then de facto you don't have the best and the brightest. And so the reason we did the research was to make sure that these powerful women could share how they got to where they were with all the other women and men as well in the company. And so that was the purpose of the research. There's a lot of research done externally, and some of it shows that if you have at least 3 women on your board of directors, you're more profitable, you get more revenue, and it's a better company. It's a more innovative company. Why 3? Because 1, you're kind of alone. 2, well, you're buddies, but nobody pays any attention to you. But when you get 3, you're a lot more powerful with 3 people because you have a little more diversity among the women in being able to do things. So that extends downward into your organization as well at all levels.
So I hope all the CEOs and entrepreneurs here took note of that, right? At least 3. Mindy, when it comes to hiring, what are you looking for?
I can't really talk about how important diversity is and diversity of all types. And I just think, I tell people, it's just smart. It just makes business sense. You know, we cover Miami, obviously, and this is a very diverse city. We're 20 years ahead of the rest of the United States and what it's going to look like. And so we've been dealing with this issue for a really long time. And so for us, it's really important to have, you know, we need certain language skills. We need, and not just language, we need cultural differences. So not just Spanish speakers, but not just Cubans, but also Venezuelans and Colombians who, you know, understand the culture. We need Haitians and Creole speakers, you know, Brazilians and Portuguese. So we really try to look at a broad, you know, whenever I'm hiring, I kind of make it a point to say I need to have a mix. And always try to really look at diverse candidates because, you know, you can't really, you don't want to be covering a community as a foreign correspondent, right? You know, the foreign correspondent syndrome where they, you know, just pop into a country and everything is so exotic and interesting and there's such a disconnect. So we really need to be covering this community because we live here, we're part of it, and I look for people to reflect that. And I think that goes for any kind of business. You know, you just get a diversity of ideas and approaches as well.
Was that an advantage you had that you started as an intern in 1986 and you went up the ranks? So that obviously gave you an insight.
Yeah, and I think that we actually, we're probably in a minority. For instance, like the Miami Herald is run practically by all women. Like my publisher's a Hispanic female, the editorial board editor is an African American woman, the Miami El Nuevo Herald is a Hispanic woman, so there's a lot of, we have at least 3, you know, I think we have more like 5. And so, but I think those seeds were planted, yes, decades ago. And, you know, I don't think anybody was trying to do us a favor. What they saw is they saw a changing demographic. It was a time when we created neighbors, the community sections, and they needed people to really cover small communities, and they tried to hire people who understood those communities. And that's when a lot of us who are in a position now of you know, to run the place started in those early hires.
What do you look for, Miriam, in hiring in terms of personal traits?
Attitude. You can teach anybody to do just about anything, but they have to have the proper attitude. I think attitude is key. Obviously, we look at diversity, we look at everything else that others have said, but our number one thing is attitude, and we can trade. The other trait is the individual needs to want to have that, I think it was said yesterday, perseverance, that I want to make it. That's something that we really look at when we're hiring somebody. Enthusiasm. Leaders, everybody thinks that being a great leader is, you know, knowing very much your work. No. Leaders have to be enthusiastic. You have to love and have the passion that someone will follow you wherever and whenever you want to go, and wherever you want these people following. So we look at those characteristics when we're hiring somebody. Obviously, diversity and others are key important too.
To Denise, to kind of start wrapping it up, what, if you could give one lesson in terms of what worked and what didn't work for you to get to the position that you are, what would you want the audience to take?
It's hard to say one, but I think professionalism and leadership. Be a lifelong learner. Be a continuous learner. I strive to learn something every day, and I'm sure before the end of the day today I'll learn, in fact, I did learn something new about the no guilt. But strive to be a continuous learner and take the initiative, like Miriam said. And I guess if there was one piece of advice, I would say whatever business or organization you're in, develop business acumen, okay? Understand the business. Understand what the goals of the CEO or the president of the organization are. Read the annual reports. Understand where the business is going, because once you understand that, you'll find opportunities to take risks and innovate and go further in the company.
Mindy?
You know, I would tell my younger self, so I always fantasize about, what is that, you know, 13 going on 30, like when they swap bodies,
Yes.
or it's like an old movie that probably half of you haven't seen because it's like you weren't born yet. But, you know, I wish I could tell my younger self, like, kind of act like a man, and that's with all that's actually a compliment to men, which is, I think women, to Miriam's point, like we verbalize our fears because we're so used to just talking, and we talk about our emotions and how we feel. So like when something freaks us out, we just say it. And sometimes we say it to our bosses and the people who are in position to make decisions about our careers. And so I would say like, no, don't say it. Like act like, great, you want me to really, and this happened to me. I remember I was a young reporter, and I got a call that within 2 days my editor wanted me to go to Cuba. Now, if you're from this town, you understand that a trip to go to Cuba is huge, right? Well, I said, no, I can't. Are you kidding me? Like I have to do all this research. I'm not prepared, and and luckily he ignored me. And it ended up, and I went, and I did just fine. It was one of the best reporting trips I've ever taken in my life. And so whenever I know I have young reporting, I say, if you're freaking out, just call your mom, go to the bathroom and cry, pretend you've got allergies. I've done it like my whole life. Oh, I got those allergies. But just don't say you can't do it, because there's too many people already doubting your ability to do it. Why are you going to verbalize it for somebody else and give them a reason to doubt you? So that's my one.
And could I just add to that very quickly, because the CEO of IBM, by the way, she's the CEO, female CEO of the largest company that's on the Fortune 500. She tells the same story. And the story is that men go for potential, but women feel that you have to know exactly how to do the job before you take it. That goes back to taking risk. And she actually tells a similar story where the first time she was asked to lead a huge part of the company, she said, I don't know that if I'm ready for that, maybe I need to take this job or that job. She goes home, her husband says, you said what? He said, if that had been a guy, he would have said, how much more money do I make and where's my office, right? And not even knowing what they were doing. So I absolutely agree with you, Mindy, that keep your mouth closed. Even though you're thinking it, don't say it. Take a deep breath and say, yes, if you think I can do it, I know I can do it, and take the job.
To wrap it up, Denise, I agree with you. Believe in yourself. Women, we tend not to believe in ourselves. Actually, this is a great story. Manny Medina's here, or was here. Manny Medina believed in me when I did not believe in myself. He actually gave me a job as president and CEO of a bank when I was 35 years old. And I was like, oh my God, and what am I supposed to do, and how do I do it? And he says, just go, sit, you know how to do it, you will do it, and if you don't know, we will learn together. And we did. So believe in yourself, listen to others. This is a great example. I was telling Pamela when we were getting ready for this that I always thought I was a great listener. And one of my employees came to me one day and she says, can you listen to me? I said, of course I'm listening to you. I quoted verbatim exactly what she had said. And, you know, I was writing while I was doing this, by the way. I looked up and there was a blank in her face. I realized I listened to what she said, but I had not heard a word of what she said. I had not grasped the meaning of what she wanted me to hear. So believe in yourself, listen to others, hear people. It is important. You never know when you're going to learn from the most insignificant. You learn from a child. I learn from my grandkids every day. So listen to others and truly believe in yourself.
Denise, before we finalize, Denise, did you have a moment where you had that aha moment where you realized you had become the mentor instead of the mentee?
I don't know that I had an aha moment. I will say that I think I was a sort of born leader mentee. I mean, ever since I've been young, I used to volunteer to work during the summer for no pay just because I wanted something to do, or maybe get out of the house. I don't know which one it was. And I've always volunteered and gone into elementary schools, other schools, even in high school, I mentored folks that were doing less well in their grades than I. So I never had an aha moment, but I will tell you how it happened. People just adopt mentors. People come up to you and they start asking you for advice. And then over time, people start asking you to be a mentor. And they don't always work out, but that's the start. So yeah, people started adopting me as a mentor, and that's where it went.
Mindy, to close, in terms of the Miami Herald and the evolution that we had mentioned before, what do you see going forward?
So I just see we're on a kind of an interesting, I will say interesting financial time in the industry, right? Because we're all, and it's not just news, I will say it's not just me, it's all media and it's all a lot of industries, right? We're all being disrupted by new technology, and it changes so rapidly that just when by the time we figured out the desktop, I mean, 70% of our traffic now is coming through your phones. And so you got to be super agile and react really quickly and be very nimble. So I think that what I tell my staff is that how we do what we do and how it gets to our readers, that's going to change, and it's going to keep changing really quickly. And actually, there's so much that's exciting about that in terms of possibilities. But the real core of what we do, the values of, and the importance of journalism to a democratic society, and I really believe that, corny as it may sound, that is absolutely not going to change. And so I just think, well, I'll be interested to look back in 20 years and see what we're reading on. It's going to be like,
Hello.
So, but yeah, I think that we're trying to adapt to the big changes, and I think it'll be an interesting ride.
We sure will. So once again, thank you so much to Miriam, to Denise, and to Mindy for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
That was easy,
That was easy.
right? Thank you, everyone.